anything else, they weren't connected. So I rocked up and was given the task of explaining our values. Now the board had very kindly provided some high-level values, extremely high-level aspirational values. My job was to take those highly aspirational values and develop them into something that was practical, that anyone that came into Presbyterian Sport Upper South Island could actually look at and think, yeah, I can do that, I know what that means, I can deliver that. So the first thing to do was to name us, to give us a name that related to what we were trying to do. So to korowai, I'm sure most of you know, most of you have seen that Olympic korowai. A korowai is something that wraps around you. And in this sense, this is a spiritual korowai that we are wrapping around ourselves. Spiritual korowai, as we go through, you'll see exactly where the weaving takes place. So the first thing to do was to bring it to life, and the only way we could do to bring it to life, the only way I feel I could bring it to life, was to use the visualization of weaving. You take one strand of non-Māori, and you take one strand of Māori, and you weave them together. You don't bash each other over the head trying to figure out which is the best way. You weave them together, and this takes time, and it takes a process. And sometimes people get grumpy with it, sometimes people love it, but at the end of the day, we are weaving. And that is what the thread of my whole job really is all about, is the weaving. So what was I going to weave into this korowai? As you can see here, the bringing the values to life, I know you're reading it, so I won't go over it, you just carry on reading behind me. And the way to bring these values to life was through the Rārangi, as I've been talking about, through the three strands. I had to limit it to three, otherwise we would have been here all day and all night. So the three strands were: explore our ways of working from a tikanga Māori perspective, agree how these will work in practice, like down at base level, not up here in the aspirational space, and reflect on what this means at a personal level. So Rārangi weaving together, as I said, invokes all these feelings. You know, some get a bit annoyed, some are really cool with it, some are a bit nervous about it. So that's where we started, with a whole bunch of people that were feeling all those emotions. So, the high aspirational value that the board set up was aroha tanga. Aroha, I'm sure you all know, means love, but in Māoridom it means so much more than just love. Love, aroha, can mean standing beside someone who has just disappointed you to the nth degree. You know, your son, your daughter, your mother, your father have disappointed you in a way that you could not believe. Unconditional aroha means that you will stand by them anyway. It's that kind of aroha that we're talking about. It's that kind of aroha that we're weaving. Because not everybody presents as the same cool person. Not everybody you're going to see is going to be absolutely fabulously okay with life. And with Presbyterian support, we do a lot of counselling work. So people are not okay when they come to see us. They need a lot of aroha, but not just aroha. They need it to come from here. So how do we do that? What does that actually look when you're going deeper for this word aroha? We had to extend it out to whakawhanaungatanga. Now, aroha is at the top of our values. Remember that, it always stays at the top because nothing happens without unconditional love. Whakawhanaungatanga, what does that look like for our team? Māori are very, very specific about whakawhanaungatanga. Whakawhanaungatanga is what we're doing right now. We're all sitting together, we all kind of know each other, maybe we don't. Maybe we know each other really well and we don't want to know each other, but that's okay, we can sit at separate tables. Whakawhanaungatanga is bringing everybody together from all walks of life, just like Jesus did. He brought everybody together, the sinners, the saints, sat them all at the same table. That's what whakawhanaungatanga is. It's bringing all your little prickly ones, all your little groovy people, all your little nice people, every manner of society, you're bringing them in to do whakawhanaungatanga. And that simply means being together, sharing your experiences together. In Māoridom, whakawhanaungatanga also takes on a different spin. Before we would have even started, I would have had everybody stand up and give me their name, where they're from, and a little bit about themselves. We don't have time to do that today. But that's the true meaning of whakawhanaungatanga. You get to know each other. You get to know who you are. And you think, oh, you're quite like that. Oh, yeah, I've heard that guy. Oh, yeah, I saw that lady. And you go and connect. That's whakawhanaungatanga. whakawhanaungatanga. It's connecting at the deepest level or at the most shallow level, however you look at it. Whakawhanaungatanga is all about connecting. And you can't connect unless you feel the aroha. So, whakawhanaungatanga, how are we going to do that? How are we going to expand on it in a coal-based way? Tikanga, excuse me. Tikanga is another word that you'll hear bandied about quite a bit. Tikanga, what it means is correct action, that you're taking the correct action. You know, if you light a fire and you've got children, you're not going to walk away from the fire without putting the grate up, right? It's a correct action that you do. Tikanga is all about correct action. So when you're on the marae, there are correct actions that you must take. If you don't, you're going to be back at whanaungatanga getting your ears stopped because you haven't done what you were supposed to do on the marae. Tikanga is very important because it steps us out. It gives us phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. It's very important to have your tikanga laid down. So laying down your mission statement, laying down your value statement, that's your tikanga. It's very important that you get that laid down because the rest obviously flow. So tikanga. Tikanga and Presbyterian support also involves the professionalism that our social workers and our psychologists and our community workers, our kaiawhina, bring. They all bring their own tikanga, and sometimes that's where we all get a little bit, all these people bringing in their tikanga, but it doesn't match ours, right? That's where raranga comes in. That's where the weaving, the relationship making, everything you've based your relationship on comes into play. Is when you do your raranga around tikanga, because our tikanga, our codes of practice are not always going to be the same. We're all trying to get to the same direction, we're all trying to get to the same place. We might take it a different avenue, but our tikanga is always the same, to get to that place without hurting anybody, whilst maintaining that unconditional love for your fellow citizens, your global citizens. Okay, the next thing was kaitiakitanga. This is very important. You have heard a lot about this already, to do with freshwater rights. Kaitiakitanga, in New Zealand go on about it all the time. Kaitiakitanga, it's the guardianship, not the ownership, but the guardianship. So we're only here on this earth for a short time. We only have our job as CEs or GMs or whatever we are for a short time. We guard those positions, we look after those positions for the next person coming on board. That's the whole idea of being a caretaker. It's not to keep, to own, it's mine, you can't have it. You know, when I meet all my KPIs, you're not going to share in it. That's not what kaitianga is all about. It's all about the ability to lead and to protect, to guard, to make sure that what you're doing is going to be beneficial to everyone that comes through your door. Because you're guarding something, whatever it is, you're protecting it, whatever you do. It's your value. This is what you give to the rest of the country or community that you live in. So kaitiakitanga is very important, so it also blows out to the clean, green feeling we'd love to have about our country. Not quite there yet. So kaitiakitanga plays a lot into the environmental space, and you're going to hear a lot more about it as we move into keeping our place a little bit greener and cleaner. You know, if COVID's taught us anything, it means that we can look internally and have a little look and see we're not that special and shiny. We've still got a few ways to go, and that's all of us, not just Māori, not just non-Māori, all of us. So kaitiakitanga, again, is a very powerful word that when you're talking about it, remember, it's your job, the job that you're doing, you're the caretaker of. You're doing the best you can to hold it for the next caretaker, for the next protector. Ko tahitanga, this is a word that I always grin a bit, because ko tahitanga means unity. It means to come together and all agree that we're all going in the same pathway and we're all happy about it. A bit like government. So, ko tahitanga, I've narrowed this down for our team. It's all about communication. If you don't have communication, you're ruined. If you cannot communicate what it is that you want, how you want to do it, why you want to do it, then you might as well just go home. Ko tahitanga is about getting on board with the team and rowing same waka, same speed, same beat. When you're getting better at things, you'll start to pick up and you'll start to head towards the direction you need to be in quicker. Ko taiatanga is all about bringing all those weird people that you get in your lives it's about bringing them all together to share in the same aspirational dreams and values that you have for the agencies or the tertiary education or the places that you work for. Excuse me. It's all about bringing you together, and it's not about bringing together the Maori side and bringing together the non-Maori side. It's about bringing us together so that we can appreciate both sides. We can appreciate both of us. We have value. We all have value. What does that look like? You find out that we're all in the same waka, heading in the same direction. Oh, that's okay. So, I'm going to stop flicking. I'll go through this presentation as well. So, winding that all up, excuse me, if I can get you to take away anything from what I've just said, is that rarana, weaving together, is the most important thing that we can do as a nation right now. We're in really, really weird times, huddling times. People are a lot more unsure than they ever were. Māori have been through this. They mentioned the plague, was it? The Spanish flu that came through and just about decimated us. It took out hundreds of thousands of not just Māori, but everybody in the country, but it affected us more so because there was less of us. And we lost a couple of 100,000. So that taught Māori something about rarana, weaving together the thoughts that we have with our non-Māori brothers and sisters, with anybody who isn't Māori. Let's talk about how we managed to get through this. We did this by following those values, or trying to follow those values. And those values, we talk about them in Māori as being power words. Aroha ki te tākata, love to all humanity. You can only have unconditional love if you have a relationship with the fellow upstairs. Because none of these things can happen if te ariki mātua isn't at the forefront of whatever it is that you do, as a unit, as a group, as an individual. Thank you very much. You've been very, very lovely listening to me. A croaky little voice, so I'm going to move through now and
No, you're not.
No, I'm not.
Because I'm going to ask if there are any questions, because, people might want to ask you things. And I even put some water here for you, so here we go.
Are you staying for the day or are you going to disappear?
No, unfortunately, I have to scoot away about half an hour. I've got, as Stephanie inferred, I'm the head of the tari for Tahahi Rātana, for the Rana Church, so I look after the whole of the South Island and the Shadow Islands. And so we've got a hui coming up about 1 o'clock. And I've got to do a Zoom with all these fellas from the Chathams and other places. So I would love to stay. Stephanie didn't invite me to stay, no, I would love to stay. I think it's a really important hui. I think what you're doing is really important. It's amazing to have you here. And the fact that you're all the pain you got here, and Christchurch, we love our ego. Can't too much about it, you said.
Thank you for what you shared. How's the job going? How's it?
Good question.
How you going?
So I started this process 18 months ago.
Yeah.
And in that process I ended up writing our cultural assessment, which the staff all do now. They come through and they're assessed, and there's 3 places that they're assessed in, all stemming from the values. So I'm happy to actually say that probably when I started it was difficult. But 2/3, so we've got I think just over 300 staff in our takiwā. So Nelson Marlborough, through to Greymouth, through to Ashburton, and through to Christchurch. So we've got a big area to cover. And I'm happy to say that probably 2/3 of the staff are on board, they're excited, they're happy. It makes my life just so much better. Because 20 years ago, this would never have happened. It would not have happened where I would be free to be able to express these values. I literally, there are days when I sort of walk around getting quite weepy because, it's been a hard, long slog. 180 years of watching, not me personally, obviously. I'm looking very good for my age, but watching, in fact, my grandparents and not just my grandparents, grandparents either, but the grandparents of my cousins, and working, every hour God gave them, and then giving their money to fight the treaty, and often having no money to look after their family. Eating. I remember my father telling me stories about when they were really, really hard up, my grandparents still giving what they had, and my dad and his 11 siblings having a big pot of eel bone soup, which was basically bones of an eel. I don't know if you've ever seen bones of an eel along March, and some water. And that was my father's kai. That's what he lived on, him and his family. So I've seen and heard things that I guess you, if you were going to let it destroy you, it could. Colonisation happened, it was going to happen anyway. If it wasn't the British, it was going to be the Germans. If it wasn't the Germans, it was going to be the French. Colonisation happened, it happened. Okay, so what didn't happen very nicely, and that, I guess, is the crux of the problem, is that it didn't happen nicely. Not many colonisers are nice when they colonise countries, so we just look at the Incas and the Spanish, good God. So, colonisation will happen. I guess my point for the team that I work with is, there were atrocities on both sides. Yes, there were. And some of it still makes me a bit dark. However, we're here to do it through our tikanga, we're here to do it through our whakawhanaungatanga, we're here to do it through our aroha ki te takata, we're here to do it to weave together our own specialness, because Kiwis are really special, if you hadn't noticed. We're very, very special people. We're way different from our brothers over the ditch. Seriously. Got better accents too, by the way. But we are very, very special people. We are God's chosen people. Māori grew up believing we were the 13th tribe of Israel, so we're very, very special, not just because we have Māori, not just because we have non-Māori, but because we have a living, breathing culture that we can weave together and own as our own. That's where I'm trying to head, and hopefully, the conversations that you go on and have about the treaty, just remember, we had to colonise. And there are still some very angry Māori, there's still some very angry non-Māori about it. At the end of the day, it happened. How do we just take that last step and come together and acknowledge that and love each other, just because we can. And we stop saying things like, oh, I've got Maori friends, oh, I've got Pākehā friends. Then that day stops when people acknowledge each other as friends, just friends, because they're not brown, they're not white, they're not pink, they're not blue, they're just friends. And when we get to that day, we have gained and gotten to kōteitanga, because we no longer judge people or include them because of their skin colour or their beliefs. So, very good question. And hopefully, if I see you again maybe in 3 years, 3 or 4 years, we'll have moved on. Any
other questions? No? Okay, Jane's going to say a little bit. Just stand.
I keep trying to run the stage, sorry.
On behalf of us all, bless you and thank you so much. And as you mentioned, it's love God, love each other. And that's it. And thank you for the three strands weaving together. And thank you for presenting art in a loving way. Thank you. Thank you. So just and your voice gets better.